Do I get a couple of read-throughs or just one?
You get as many as you want.
Okay, perfect. Okay. Welcome to the Hometown Hollywood podcast, where you can find advice, inspiration, and strategies for success from talented people that are making a name for themselves inside the film industry, but outside of the major film cities. Here's your host, Travis Myers.
Today's guest is Dylan Hryciuk, a director and basically every other role you can think of at his own film company, Versa Films in Saskatoon, a city in Saskatchewan, Canada. I'm a huge fan of Dylan's work, and I'm pretty sure I could have drilled him for hours with questions about his awesome projects. He's an open book, and I really believe that if you're starting out on your film journey and you take notes on the things that he talks about and actually try them out, your work will improve faster and you will meet more talented people to work with. In this interview, you'll learn about how doing free work can eventually lead to landing a music video with a music label, how to approach planning your film projects, where to seek inspiration, thoughts on cameras and gear, how a negative mindset might actually be helpful in growth, how to use social media to meet filmmakers you admire, how awesome our former guest Nick Pilecki is, how to secure 40-plus locations for a music video, and how the traditional method of slowly working your way up on a film set might not be the best option for you. I have this feeling that Dylan's career is just on the verge of exploding, so if you haven't already, go and follow him on social media and watch him kill it in the industry. I hope you enjoy the conversation as much as I did, so let's get right into the show. All right. Well, Dylan Hryciuk, welcome to the show.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
So when I think of big movie towns, I think LA, New York, and Saskatoon.
Yeah.
How is Saskatoon?
It's not too bad. I think there's a lot of like pros and cons to it. Yeah, Saskatoon is like the biggest city in the prairies of Saskatchewan. It's, as everyone knows, Saskatchewan is just like this super flat portion of Canada, a little less scenic, but I don't know. It can be very calm and soothing, and it has a lot of like character to it. It's different. It kind of has that small town feel within like a bigger city, even though our bigger city is comparatively small compared to like, you know, Vancouver or Toronto or whatever. But no, it's a nice place. The people are really, really nice. Our film industry is small. We don't have a lot of like movies being shot here or whatever, but I do see a lot of creators of like my size starting to pop up more and more, of like people that are just hungry to make cool content. I have a friend that shot 3 like $0 to $10,000 feature films on his own. Wow. Yeah, there's a lot more of that coming up, or like people exploring music videos. There's a lot of corporate work here. So yeah, it's a smaller industry, but the people that are in the industry are awesome. A lot of them are inspiring me. A lot of people are very bold here to like, when I saw that guy make those feature films, I'm like, wow, how have I not, like, I don't have the guts to do that yet. Versa Films is just like me trying to build up the courage to start doing short films and hopefully eventually feature films of my own. But it's just a way for me to make money, but also for me to learn who I am as a creator. And luckily, because our industry is so small, I've been able to become, you know, a bigger fish in a small pond much easier than, you know, I might get lost in the shuffle in Ontario or Vancouver.
I think that's kind of what this show is all about, is finding people that are, the intro of the show says, making a name for themselves inside the film industry, but outside the major film cities. And it's a lot of hungry people who are just making it happen wherever they are. And speaking about that, I've noticed as I did some digging that you are a very creative person, and I found some stop motion work that you did back in the day.
Oh, no. Oh, God.
Oh, I went deep. I did the deep dive.
Yeah,
even
surprising.
with your pumpkin carving, I noticed like, this guy has patience like no other. I did probably 2 little stop motion things that were only maybe 20 seconds long, and I thought, never again. I can't handle this. How did your film journey get started?
So when I was really young, I was always into like the arts or whatever. One of the first things I was doing in grade 2, I think, was I was taking like film pictures of my action figures and I was making stories out of them. They weren't animated, but it was like I was getting the photos printed and it was like, oh yeah, here's my guys in this scenario, and they would kind of build up a story. And then after that, I moved on and I wanted to make trading cards because I was super into Pokemon and Yu-Gi-Oh! So I was making my own cards. And my parents got me a laminator so they would look like official, and we were printing backs for all of them. And me and my friends were drawing and coloring all the cards, and we were selling them to kids, at school. Because yeah. And there was a whole like rules around the game, kind of a copy of Yu-Gi-Oh, but we added a few extra flares to make it our own. And then I moved on from that, and I wanted to be a video game designer. So me and a friend, we found this program called RPG Maker, and we were making all these like small little, kind of like the Game Boy Pokemon games like that, through this program. And we started like a website with a forum, and we started building a community across, I don't know how far. We probably had a couple hundred members or something. So I was really into that. And then I wanted to be, a novelist. And so I started writing a bunch. And I think in grade 6, I was like, I had 150 pages to this novel, but some of the chapters got lost, and that's kind of when I gave up on that.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, it's a very long-winded journey. And then
it sounds like you, like me and my friends, were like wanted to do all those things, but you actually did them.
Yeah, so. I'm a bit crazy. And then I think it was grade 6 or grade 7, I started to fall in love with stop motion. Which I don't know why. I don't know if it was like someone rekindled my love for like maybe Tim Burton's The Nightmare Before Christmas or what, because I didn't grow up necessarily with that film, but I remember near that time that being a big influence in Tim Burton and stuff like that. So I started doing stop motion for like YouTube, and there were like, I was in elementary school, but there were high schools here that were sharing my work to their students, and it was really weird. I was very into that, and I wanted to be like an animating YouTuber. And that was, I think I was doing animating from grade 6 till maybe grade 9 or grade 10. And within the middle of that, we had one video project in grade 8 where we had to do like a project about bullying. And most normal people, spent an hour or half an hour just shooting in their bedroom, and it was like, this is our skit, and it all takes place, in one location. And me and my friends were like, let's write a script, let's develop like shots, and like we took the TV dolly from the school and used that as our dolly, and it was like a multiple day production. And that like was the first like, I wanted to be an animator. I was so certain. And then it was like, no, like maybe it was just like, this is way easier, but it was just like, man, I want to do film. I still have a part in me that like, I would love to do animation if I got, to that point in my career where I could kind of direct movies, but also direct some stop motion movies, every 10 years or something like that. But film really grabbed me, and then since high school, it's just been doing that over and over again, filming music videos for like my brother's band, filming live bands, and then I went to film school, and I've basically been pursuing arts and film like my whole life, I feel. So I'm one of those people that I'm like, I kind of felt like everything that I was into led to film, because film uses kind of all of them, writing, right, the photography, the creating worlds, and even the commerce, like the business side of me of like, me selling like these trading cards, that kind of comes into me trying to sell, people video that I do for them and stuff like that. So it's interesting.
you went to film school, and I really like your brand, especially your logo for Versa Films. Explain what Versa Films is, or what it means to you in the roles that you played there.
Yeah, so I run a production company called Versa Films, and we are a small company trying to do things that feel a little bigger and larger than you would expect from coming from Saskatoon. So a lot of my inspiration comes from, DPs and directors out in Ontario or Vancouver or LA. And I'm like, I don't have the budgets to do these crazy things, but I'm like, how can I, put the time in to try to make something that feels a little bigger? Or how can I work with a client and, maybe the budget's not there, but if I can convince them to do something more narrative driven, it'll be more beneficial for them, but also more creatively beneficial for me. Yeah, my whole company is like, it's me, one employee, and then every project we bring on subcontractors. And I am kind of involved in a little bit of everything. Like, I have to produce, unfortunately. My focus is directing. I have to DP for the most part, I would say 95% of the time, mainly out of necessity. I would love to hire DPs, but I can't either afford it or find the right DPs for the way I work sometimes. I edit almost every project. Yeah, I dive into a little bit of everything. I'm even always thinking about, wardrobe and set deck and how the person's hair will look and whatever. So it's all encompassing, but it's all encompassing because of necessity, because of like the budgets I work with don't necessarily allow me to hire someone that can just fully take the reins or fully like just find me stuff, because they'd be making no money to go find me a location. So that's kind of just my reality right now. And my hope is that, if I can prove that I can make this style of work, eventually the budgets will follow. And that has been partially truthful, because when I started doing work through Versa, my first couple projects, I was asking for, maybe $1,000 or whatever. And people would be like, what? $1,000? Like, are you serious? And to me, I was like, oh man, like, am I asking too much or whatever? And now we've done projects that are upwards to 20,000 for one video. And people are like, yeah, I think you gave us a lot for that. Like, they could see that I still went above what that budget needed. So I'm no longer getting, laughed at for asking for 1,000. Now people are like, yeah, you're worth more than 20. So that's very cool.
Yeah, that's got to be really reassuring. Like, it's always good to hear, oh, that was worth more than the money I asked for. And or the money that I give you. Especially, it makes you feel bad, like, dang, I should have charged more. But
usually it means that, like, our profit margins aren't very great. Like, we spend a lot on, like, hiring crew and getting all the details right. But it's just, like, I'm more passionate about making work I'm proud of than I am about, making money. As long as I'm making enough to get by right now, like, to me, I'm more about, like, the long game. My hope isn't that I'm directing corporate videos for my whole life. So it's like, the more I prove that I can do narrative-driven commercials or narrative-driven or artistic music videos, the more people are going to start buying that from me. So yeah, to me, it's just like, play the long game. It's okay to make a little bit less money and, like, you're just making it work, because eventually I do think, like, you're building the strengths in the area of expertise that you want to work, instead of just, like, following where the money comes. Because a lot of times the money is where the creative is not, until, like, the really big leagues, it seems.
Yeah. Well, I'd like to say, as for someone who does cinematography out of necessity and just knocks it out of the park, and then edits out of necessity and just knocks it out of the park, you kind of have to be a freak of nature, talent-wise, to be able to do all that. And so, I wouldn't downplay those things, but you are also very talented in the thing that you want to do the most, the directing. So let's get into some work. I've been dying to ask you some questions about some of these projects.
Sure.
I think the one that I noticed first, or what got me on the rabbit hole of looking at everything that you do is the video Summer Haze by Velour, yeah. Velour, okay. There's that French influence. There's something about it. My last guest was Wilson Lemieux from Amarillo. I was like, wait a minute, I've got Wilson Lemieux. That's a French Cajun last name. I got Logan LeBlanc from Louisiana. And so I'm getting like Louisiana people and Canadian people, and they all got this French influence. And I'm starting to think that maybe if I was a little more French, I'd be better at this.
I'm sure it's not. I am actually French, but I'm sure that has nothing to do with anything, and your work is unreal. So I think everyone looks at other people and are like, oh wow, like I wish I was at that level. Like when I look at my work, I don't see that I'm like, I see that I'm progressing and getting better than I was, but I'm so far from the kind of quality I want to put out. So I just feel like that's what most artists and filmmakers, like I feel like that's the reality. You know, I look up to a lot of DPs, or like you look at Ryan Booth or whatever, and his work's phenomenal. And he talks a lot about self-doubt and looking at where other people are at. And it's just like, you know, with social media, it's impossible. It's inevitable. There's always someone who's going to be better. And it's also, you don't see how much work and time and money went into that piece of work. So it's all kind of relative. We're all on our own weird journeys. But just know that, like, I very much feel like, oh man, if only I was this, or I had more people I could work with, or I worked harder on this aspect of my career, or I was more educated or more intelligent about this. Like, it's never ending. Like, I'm my own worst enemy when it comes to my own work. So
that's interesting to hear from somebody who does work at such a awesome level. So let's get into it. I love what you do, and this video, I think, Summer Haze by Velour. I think I said it better that time. That was a really creative little project. And so how does that project come to be? What was the creative process for that video?
Yeah, so that was a really fun one. It's probably one of my favorite projects as well. And one of the cool things about it was that I was able to rekindle that little stop motion kid from years back, because I've been off the stop motion train for a long time. Basically, that artist had heard about us because we had won a local award province-wide for our music video Petite Fleur, who is by Pontex, who actually wrote our demo reel theme song, which would be the one I played to my intro. And she saw that and was like, oh, like if I'm gonna hire someone, I need to hire like this guy. Like, he's doing stuff that's different and that's catching people's attention and whatever. And so we met up, and she just had a really great attitude. She was very much of like finding the right people and letting them do what they do best. She was willing to put in real money into it. She had saved up quite a bit. She was like, yeah, like she's skipping over going to university because she wants to put that university money into getting the right recordings, getting the right videos, getting the right marketing. So she's like doing things in a way that I don't see too often in Saskatchewan. And the creative was, we got together, we kind of built a friendship, and it was me trying to learn of like, who are her influences? What are influences I have that she reminds me of? And learning who she is as an artist and how she wants to represent herself. Then I was slowly starting to get different ideas. And I think I pitched like 7 concepts to her. And that one was really for her first video because it had a lot of focus on her and it was just visual. It really struck her. And to me, I don't do a lot of videos that are just like vibey and just visual. Like, to me, I always I strive for narrative or some sort of theme or whatever. And so what I pitched was, it's a very it's her performing in front of these seamless backdrops, and then there's going to be this opposite non-studio stuff that feels very raw and real of her performing in multiple locations outdoors. And then we're going to have animation and all this stuff. But the theme I was kind of projecting was the song is about letting summer be over, and you're almost waiting for it to be over because there was like this negative energy to the summer for her, which I think relates to like a relationship just ready for it to be over, kind of like a summer fling. What I kind of pitched was like, what if we add a little bit of that kind of emotion and whatever into like the theme? So the colors we picked for the backdrops are supposed to represent like a fading sunset. So she's in front of yellow, pink, and blue. That's kind of how I picture, the sun dimming into like blue hour. And all her outfits match that. And all the outdoor locations also have like that gold sunlight or those pink clouds or eventually blue hour. And then all the animation, so it doesn't just feel random, it's all going to be summer items. Some of them are just going to be fun, but some of them are going to be like, distorting them. So like a tennis ball on fire and all this like weird floating, like a bicycle wheel just floating there, and it kind of feels like a sun beaming down or whatever. So it was all like, to a lot of people, that project feels probably really random and just vibey. And like for me, it's like, oh, it was all about like theme and like color and telling a story without telling a story. But it was such a blast to make. But it took forever. Like we spent 7 days to make that video.
Really?
But luckily,
that's incredible.
I have, because of my background in stop motion, like I'm an overly patient person. So I think we spent 4 days in a garage, just 3 days animating all this stuff. And I bought a program to do it better than, I did in high school, called Dragon Frame, that like Leica Films and like the big stop motion animators use. And yeah, it was just like, it was so fun. It was like, oh, we spent 2 hours to get this sandcastle crumbling for maybe a second in the video. But it was like, I don't know, that stuff is probably why you're talking to me today, is because like that stuff added to the end piece, I think.
For sure. Yeah. I will admit I didn't understand the connection of everything when I watched the video. But now fair. That I'm hearing it, I'm like, oh my gosh, it just makes so much sense. And now I appreciate it on a whole nother level. It fit before, but now it's like, dang. You thought about this a lot. And if that's just one of 7 concepts, like, holy cow.
Yeah, this was like the simplest concept, weirdly enough. And I think that's like one of the things I strive for in all my work, is that there's like underlying choices that like, 99, maybe 100% of people won't read into or see or whatever. But like, I personally think you feel some of those things. Like if we just chose like a green backdrop and a purple backdrop or whatever, like I don't feel like it would feel the same way as the way that the colors represent what the song's about.
You use primarily the Ursa Mini?
Yeah.
What are your theories on gear? I like to talk about gear sometimes, even though I know that it's not everything, but it helps.
Yeah, for sure.
What are your thoughts on owning versus renting gear, and why do you choose the camera that you choose?
Well, where I'm from in Saskatoon, you can't really rent gear. Like there's one rental house and they don't have everything that someone would need or want, and you have to be trained in like to rent the red, you have to be trained, and it just doesn't make sense to the kind of business I run. And so when I was starting my business, a lot of the conversation was about how Blackmagic was kind of shaking up the industry with the original cinema camera, the 2.5K camera. And to me, like, it's a really weird camera to operate. It's not, it doesn't fit perfectly in your hands. You kind of need to rig it up. But the image was like mind-blowing for the dollar. It was like, wow, it looks like a movie. And to me, that's always been so important, was like the texture and like the dynamic range and that kind of thing. It does change how your work feels. It doesn't feel like, not that there's anything wrong with like the DSLR craze or whatever, but when that camera came out, it was like, oh, this is a way to kind of set us apart, our stuff. If we light and expose and do all the other stuff right, like it could maybe feel a bit more filmic, which is an interest of mine. And I think it's an interest of a lot of people's. A lot of the high-end commercials that you see feel like these huge budget movies, and there's a reason for that. And then, yeah, we kept growing. Blackmagic kept growing, and we ended up getting the Ursa Mini 4.6K, the original. That's still the only camera I own. I don't own the Pro, but I have borrowed the Pro for a couple shoots from other people. So most of our work is shot on the original. A few projects have been shot in B-RAW with the new one. And honestly, the only difference I see is like those NDs make a great difference, because the variable ND I have, sometimes you get some stuff in the image that you don't want, like some purple vignetting or whatever that you have to work around, where those NDs are just super clean. And I feel like I'm getting slightly better images with that camera, but I don't own one yet. But I do think I'm not a huge gearhead. Like, to me, it was like, I need something affordable that gets me closest to the image I like, and I like the Alexa image. So I think the Blackmagic kind of has that feeling. It reminds me more of that. But I'm not a very technical filmmaker. I go off of feel. Like, I don't pay a lot of attention to like, oh, this light behind here is 2 stops above here, and that's going to do this and whatever. Like, I'm very like, let's dial that up or dial it down just based on like, how is this image making me feel? Does it look right to my eye? Does it look dynamic? I'm not someone who just like, you put gear in front of me and I just know how to work it and get the best out of it. I like owning my gear so I can kind of learn it inside and out and learn how I kind of can make things with it. I'm a big Blackmagic fanboy, but I also would not die on the hill of like, gear is everything. I think, especially knowing how much work I put into every project, there's so many filmmakers that it's like, no, the reason why this works is because they cared about the location. They cared about shooting it from the right angles and did the planning. And, they rigged lighting to replace the roof lights and stuff like that. And that's what makes a project come together. And like working on making something that's not just nice, but also cohesive and tells the right story for the right piece. Like, to me, that's the stuff that's like mind blowing to me, instead of like, there's like thousands of great cameras now and everyone is shooting with them and not everyone's work looks the same. So it's maybe everyone's work looks better than it did 10 years ago, but the work that really stands out is still the people that could shoot on a DSLR and still outclass, me, because they know what they're doing at just such a high level. So yeah, I hope that makes sense. Gear's important, but it's not the most important.
So you had said the name of the band and the name of the song, which I'm going to butcher. The one that
the French
Ponte,
one.
The French
Pontex.
one.
Yeah,
Pontex. Okay. I watched that and I thought, is there any way you could have fit in more locations? Because that just seems like a monumental task. Like, I think if I get a project and we're doing 2 or 3 locations, that like, ooh, this is going to be a lot of work. You seem like you went everywhere for that one. And not only following one person, but 4 people at a time. I like the look. I like everything about that music video. Let's talk about that one. How did that one come to be? What was the creative process? And how long did it take you to make that thing?
Yeah, quite a bit of time. That video was a crazy experience. It was like maybe too ambitious for me and the artist. I've worked with that artist quite a bit now. He's a close friend of mine. His name's Mario Lepage. And he is Pontex, but he does have, band members for live performances and stuff. Basically, he had come to me. He was applying for a big grant, so it'd be our first music video that had a pretty healthy budget. And he was very influenced by this one music video by Radiohead. And basically, he's just walking through all these beautiful locations and just wandering through life. And it's shot by Paul Thomas Anderson, like the director of Magnolia, Boogie Nights, There Will Be Blood.
Okay.
Yeah, of course it's stunning. It's super beautiful. And he was like, yeah, I want something like this. And I'm like, ooh, like this probably costed a fortune, but let's see what we can do. And then to me, I didn't want to do something that was just like a copycat of that video. So I was like, how can we, do something that's influenced by that, but like, how can we turn it on its head? And I got this stupid idea. I was watching some fashion video that used split screen, and I usually hate split screen. I'm like, why? Like, I don't think it adds much. And for some reason, it really worked in this fashion ad. And I was like, what if we do a video that like slowly starts breaking off based on like social interaction? So this guy's wandering and he feels like a ghost in society, but as soon as he notices a person and that person notices him, now their perspective opens up where now we're watching both of them wander through life, and it kind of expands and expands. If I had all the money in the world, I probably would have kept it going till like there was like 16 or 100 people, like something crazy. But it was like, okay, now that we have this crazy concept, this is basically like we're shooting 4 music videos. So it's so weird. We had a decent budget. I think it was just above $10,000. And, the money goes so quick because I was like, it is not how I would have spent the money. Typically, I'm like, okay, I want this to look like world class. I want it to be very lit and very like planned. And this shoot was kind of the opposite. It was planned, but it was very free flowing. It was very like, okay, I think our one shooting schedule, we were going to like 10 plus locations in one day. And it was just like, you have an hour here, just get a shot of a person because we needed to incorporate like 40 locations over the whole piece or something. It was a little bit quantity over quality because it was like the story is about just passing by through all these relatable places until the end. They come into a built set. Every person comes into like their apartment suite or whatever, and it's all the same set that we redressed. Okay. And it's very like studio lit, and it's supposed to be like the opposite of the rest of the music video. And all these people who were interacting or not interacting out there in the real world, they get like this euphoria from interacting and finally being on their phone in the safety of their home. And there's like this weird euphoria where all these 4 people are experiencing the same thing. But it's supposed to be kind of a commentary on like our inability to like connect with people face to face, but we're connecting online and yeah. How that's just kind of a weird thing. It's a bit up its own butt in concept, but I think it was cool. It's a very different video. It is unlike anything I have done before, and I think it was a good use of the split screen. I think there was like a meaning, a reason to use it there. But yeah, I think overall we had 3 or 4 main production days that were like full days, and then a bunch others that was just like, oh, let's get this one location here, or let's try to get 2 locations here today. So I think overall it took 11 days to shoot, but we had a very small crew.
Wow. That's awesome. I do think the split screen works really well. There's so much to look at. Like I could rewatch it and like, okay, I'm going to follow this guy this time, or I'm going to follow her story. And,
yeah.
What did you shoot on for that project? Because it looks very interesting. I love the way this one looks. It's got a grainy, vintage look to it.
So it is the Ursa Mini 4.6K, but I added a lot of grain in post, and I think we had a Black Pro Mist 2, which most people are like, don't do it, it's too much. Whoa. And I'm like, if you put that on and you grade it down and re-add that contrast, for very specific projects, I think it works. We just shot a couple scenes with it again for this new music video we're about to release. So I don't always use it. I'm not like, to me, it's a very strong choice. But for that video, because we were doing something that was very just natural and raw, and we wanted it to be kind of surreal, it was like, I want to go with something that was a very like bold, strong choice to give it some flavor, because we were shooting in just like sun's out, like the day's not nice, or overcast here, or we're shooting by a bunch of cows. Like, we weren't shooting in the most beautiful places. We were just trying to make things work out of all these scenarios. So that was kind of the reasoning for that.
Well, you went with a bold look, and I think it paid off big time.
Thank you.
You went through so many locations. This is, I guess, the last question I have on this project, besides why can't I do it? But
you can. You just need to spend 11 days making one project for little money, and you can do it too.
There's the secret. That's what I've been trying to get out.
Yeah.
So how did you get all these locations? Was it just like, what do we have available? Or how do you go about securing 40 different locations?
Oh, it was hell. It was a little bit of everything. So it was like we wrote a list of it. Honestly, it was hard to think about, 40 unique places. Like, a lot of times, people always make jokes of like, oh, all music videos are shot in a forest or in a warehouse or whatever. And it's like, where do you expect us to shoot? Like, firstly, like finding the spot that works, but also like, just because you find that spot doesn't mean people want you shooting there, or that you have the budget to pay to like run that cafe for 12 hours or whatever.
Yeah.
And so for this project, we wrote a big list, me and Mario, and it was like, okay, here's our want. Let's see what we can get. And so he would try to like, okay, well, we want a church. I live in this small town that'll let me just walk into this church whenever. So we got that. My uncle owns a farm. We'll just go on his farm and do a couple shots there. There's actually, weirdly enough, there's so many scenes in there. There was actually probably 5 to 10 that were cut out just from not being good enough. So there's even more than you've seen. Or we did reshoots.
Gosh.
So it was ridiculous. And then we started reaching out to companies like the storage unit place, and that one took forever to get, but they were like, yeah, this sounds really cool, and they acted in it. Then the school, I think it was a school in a small town that Mario used to go to, so they were like, oh yeah, like one of our past students making a music video, sure, like hop into our real class and start shooting, and that's what we did. And then some places were just like, a lot of the outdoor stuff is like, well, it's a field, like you can just kind of go there and shoot. And there's like these weird like sand duney locations that look terrible if you aimed the camera slightly right, but in the right direction, it looks kind of unique and whatever. So there were a couple locations we couldn't get, but yeah, like a lot of it was like just talking to friends, seeing what's free, and then going to like local businesses and being like, look, we'll be here for half an hour. You can be working. It's a safe environment. We're a crew of like, it'll literally be me with a Ronin and him walking through this space. And we got them to sign contracts and everything. And yeah, most people were like, yeah, this sounds easy and kind of cool. And then, and then we won an award for this video. We won Best Music Video in Saskatchewan at our like big music Saskatchewan award ceremony. So that was cool.
That's amazing. So leveraging places you might already have life experience with can go a long way if you're looking for locations. That's something I've always struggled with. Like, I want to shoot here, and then maybe I come up with the idea before I actually have a real location I can shoot at. And I'm like, oh, dang, now how am I supposed to find it? But
yeah,
that's very cool.
I would say locations is one of my biggest struggles. And if I had the budget, I would hire a locations person every time, because it's like, I just need someone who's bold, who's going to like ask people and wheel and deal until they get the places. Because a lot of times it feels like we just last minute luck out. But I think a big part of it is just like, know what you want and try to get it. And if you get 75% of it, that's better than not trying at all and just shooting at a place that's like easy. A lot of times just talking to strangers or, putting a message out on Facebook or whatever can do you a lot of good. I've had people offer me cars, locations, background actors just from Facebook, people I know. So like, I guess I have no shame. I'm just always like trying to make the best thing I can.
One time, we're shooting something in downtown Beaumont, Texas. Nothing going on. It's almost like a ghost town, downtown area. And this guy drives up in a Porsche and he gets out. I'm 28 years old and he looks like he's about my same age, maybe a year or two older. And he's like, "Hey man, you guys filming stuff?" Like, "Yeah." "Hey, I own a couple buildings downtown, like these big, huge, probably multi-million-dollar buildings. Like, If you ever want to shoot at any of them, here's my number. I also got some abandoned buildings, like an old rice dryer.
What the heck?"
It's like, oh my gosh, this is a dream come true. And then I saved his number on my work phone, and then I left that job I was at, and now I don't have his number. So,
oh my God.
It's like the worst thing that's ever happened to me, and I'm hoping somehow he hears this podcast and reaches out to him and comes back and says, "Hey man, here's my number." But
that has never happened to me. So, wow, that sounds amazing. Yeah, locations are tough, and I think they're so key. A lot of my work is like, I won't shoot in an all-white room. Like, I need good locations, and good locations are not places that are good to live in. There are a lot of times places that you would never want to live in, like, oh, this is tacky. But on film, this is really like cool and unique, and like the tackiness is interesting or whatever. It gives character to the film. Like if you watch movies, like look at the houses and the places they're in, and they're all super old. They all have like 1,000 lamps on in the background. Like it's all about like, you want to find that aesthetic. And I think the work I gravitate towards is like you were saying, like, how do you do a music video with 40 locations? Well, my advice would be don't. But but I do think doing projects that, like, from a pace standpoint, like keep moving and keep taking you to new places is like very important, at least to the work I do. Like this video, there's a lot of locations. Summer Haze, there's a lot of, you could break it down to locations, like a lot of different looks. And like, I try to do that with everything I do. Even if you get a house, okay, break the story into 3 rooms in that house instead of 1 or 5. Like I've done whole music videos where it's all in one house, but we broke it up into like 8 locations. And yeah, it's more work, but it just, you don't get bored. A lot of times when you watch something that all takes place in one scenario, it's like, well, you're kind of seeing the same shot over and over again. Maybe the angle's slightly different, but if you can like just have that person in a slightly different room with a new lighting setup, it feels fresh. And I think that's a key to like a lot of the work I like. They know how to like progress the story in a way that like the location is always changing, and it's changing your expectations and feeling fresh every like 5 to 10 seconds. My work is very planned and very like overly thought out, probably more than it needs to be. But a lot of times the end product comes out where it like, oh, it feels intentional. Where a lot of times when I first started, it was like, oh, they asked us to do this video. Like, let's just go there and shoot some stuff and we'll make it into a video. And that stuff turned out fine. But I feel like when you start putting in the pre-production and you start looking at like thinking about, oh, we're going to be on this side of the room because this looks awesome. So all our lighting is going to be upstage from over here, and trying to figure that out. Like, I think it's, putting that extra time into lighting, but also putting extra time into just like pre-production. Like I plan for, what if our whole plan falls apart? Do I have a backup? A lot of people probably don't, and they just try to like stick with the thing that they set out to do. And to me, I'm like, no, I have a backup plan. I have backup scenes in case this doesn't work and we just need to pivot.
Wow.
I think that's really changed like where my career is going, or where my work is starting to look and feel better to myself or even other people, is just because it's like, there's care put into like small details, and it's not just like run and gun. A lot of people do really great run and gun work, but I think the work most people aspire for is work that like took a lot of thought and planning and a lot of skill. And that's where that's what I'm working towards. I still don't see my work in that way. Like I don't think I've gone there, but I think I'm starting to get what it takes to, make that $100,000 commercial or whatever.
Yeah. So you're saying that you're put in, my Texas just came out. You're putting more emphasis on lighting and planning. So where do you look for to inspiration? What is one of your big resources for learning cinematic lighting? Where do you get inspiration for direction?
I am always learning. I am always researching. I watch YouTube videos probably every day. Sometimes it's to learn the same techniques that I learned 5 years ago, even learning about shutter speed again or exposure, false color, whatever. And it's just because I want it to become so natural in my brain that I don't have to think about it. Because a lot of times, when you first learn about that stuff, it's here's the 10 to 20 things you should do before you even turn on the camera. And that can be overwhelming. But the more you learn and the more you put it into practice, the more it just becomes second nature. It's just like breathing. Of course, I'm going to pay attention to my color temp. And of course, I'm going to, get my f-stop to where I want and then light it accordingly or whatever. Or I'm going to expose for my highlights. That's a big thing that's changed my lighting game, is exposing for the things I can't control, like windows or the outdoors, the sun, and then lighting accordingly to get, my levels where I need them to be aesthetically. I think I just I absorb as much as possible and I relearn and relearn and I'm inspired by everything. I love, cinematographers like Nick Pilecki, who you had as a guest, who I was so lucky to work with this year, and now he's a good friend of mine. I'm super inspired by Films, who was a Canadian punk rock music video director who I think he's in Vancouver now, but he's been doing unreal stuff for years. I'm inspired by a lot of film directors. I'm inspired by a lot of local talent here who are doing stuff that, maybe it's not the kind of work I aspire to make, but they're making bold moves to make work that is very for them, that I haven't been courageous enough to do. And even photography, I save so much photography as just this could be an idea that would work in a music video, or the way this light hits this person's face, or they're using streaks in this unique way. I just think be inspired by, oh, this sounds so cheesy. Be inspired by everything around you, even the people you're talking with, the people in your life, pull from real experiences and write that into a project. My next music video that I'm doing is about my own experience dealing with my grandma going through dementia. And, a lot of people might not fully see that or get that, but literally the script I wrote is my mom's name, my dad's name, my name, and we casted actors to play basically my family, and then my grandma, and now they're naming the song after my grandma. And it's just
wow.
I don't know, I just be inspired by your own experiences, by all art around you, or just anything. I get it from everywhere, and to me, I'm just the more you relearn and realize that everyone is better than you. I think that the biggest thing that stops people from progressing is thinking that you know it all. And to me, I feel at least I tell myself, and this is probably a very negative place to be in, but that I know nothing, and I need to keep striving for more and bigger and more ambitious, and I want to be like Nick, and I want to be like Films, and I want to be like Max Moore, and I want to be like Denis Villeneuve. There's so many people that inspire me, and that's what creates that chase for me in everything I do.
Well, I think if that is what's working for you, then continue to think that way. But I'd like to let you know that I want to be Versa Films. I want to be Dylan Hryciuk.
No, you don't. I promise
give yourself credit where it is due, because you do awesome stuff.
Well, I appreciate that. I definitely do let a negative mindset drive me a lot, which is to a lot of people not healthy, but I do think there's a lot, weirdly enough, beneficial in that, to spend years thinking you suck, but that's the only way you get to a place where you suck less. I don't know.
Yeah.
When I look at it, I'm thinking global, and I know so little compared to Roger Deakins or whatever. You told me that you like the way I light things or whatever. And I'm like, man, I feel like I'm winging it every time. But clearly I'm learning a little bit because I'm able to wing it similarly every time and progress. But it's like, there's so much I don't know. And I think it's important to know that.
So I know that connections are one of the biggest assets you can have in the film industry. Do you have a active approach to networking and finding other talent to work with? Or do you think people just find you and are like, hey man, I want to work with you because your work is so awesome?
That definitely does not happen like too often. I've had the odd occasion where someone, I guess, admires a piece. Weirdly enough, that velour piece a lot. Like I've gotten someone from a couple cities away that was like, oh man, I love that video. Like I want to work together, and now we're working together. But usually I'm a very, and you probably can't hear it from this interview, but I'm a much more introverted person. I'm terrible at networking. I don't like doing the whole business thing, and I'm not a schmoozy person. What I try to do is just be very honest with people and sell that, like, I'm very passionate. I'm probably going to care about their project more than they care about it. And so that, like, for some reason, that has really attracted certain clients. And then for just like other filmmakers, most filmmakers don't think they're like, hot. And whether you put them on a pedestal or whatever, like a great example is I was a big admirer of Nick Pilecki, or I think he was Hungry Boy Productions at the time. And his work like blew me away. Everything he did, I was like, wow, he is on some next level stuff. And I will not be shocked if he's, doing some of the biggest commercials in the next 5 years. Like he is something special. And I messaged him as like a fanboy, and I was like ready for him to not respond. Like he has like 20,000 plus followers on Instagram. Like I'm from Saskatoon. Like no one wants to come here. It was like, he's not going to respond, but let's just see like, what's his rate? It's probably insane, but I'd love to work towards that. And he got back and he was so friendly, and he actually checked out my work and he liked it. And it built like a friendship, and he gave me like oh yeah, if we work together, like I'd give you a favor rate, because like he wanted to now work with me because he saw something special in me. It's probably because I'm a insane planner with every project, and he liked the idea of being on a project that had more planning, I think. You'd be surprised, like there will be some people that, won't respond and whatever, and it sucks, but like just be bold and tell the people you admire that you admire them in a non-creepy way. And a lot of times if it seems, especially if it seems like there's opportunity for them in the future that they could get a job from you or whatever, and it's not just you hitting them up for advice all the time, you'd be surprised with like what opens up. The fact that this guy I admired so much is now one of my favorite collaborators, and he gives me notes on all my work. He sends me work he's working on, and I get to see like, the behind the scenes of how he makes it work. And I think once you break down the wall of like, oh my God, he's a god of filmmaking, it's like, oh, he's a human being, and like we're friends now. He's gonna shoot my wedding for me, and like,
oh wow,
yeah, don't tell people that because he does not shoot weddings, but he's doing me a solid because we're friends now. But I don't know, just be bold and tell people that you like their stuff and you want to, interact with them or whatever. And most people will say yes. If someone contacts me, I always respond. There was this guy named Travis. He wanted me on a podcast, and here I am.
Well, I'm sure Travis appreciates that.
Hopefully.
All right, so I guess the last question is, what I think you may have mentioned it a little bit, but what work do you have in the pipeline that we can be on the lookout for, and how can our guests connect with you? What's the best way to follow your work?
Yeah, sure. So the best way to follow me is on Instagram or Facebook, both at Versa Films, or you can follow me personally on Instagram at Dylan Hryciuk. But most of my film stuff is through Versa Films. And basically we post most of our favorite projects, screens from them, some behind the scenes, trying to figure out, the best way to share our work without being like too much and without being too little. But that's kind of the best way to follow us. As for my future, I'm definitely the person, like, I don't do a crazy amount of jobs, but I put a crazy amount of work into the jobs that I do. So I would say right now there's just one big project that, is coming out soon. And that's my next music video for the band Spirit Box. And it'll be our first collaboration with a label, with Rise Records. And I'm so excited. It's my first time working with a record label. And I've been building this relationship with this band Spirit Box for a couple years now. And it's been awesome. It's been probably the most wildly successful part of my career. It's like when they put out a video, I think the lowest we have is 450,000 views or something like that on one of our videos. And the highest hit.
I saw one of your videos was you just hit 1 million on the Blessed Bee.
Yeah.
Recently,
Blessed Bee
or
hit
something around
I think it's at 1.3 million views now. It has over 100 video reactions. The comments are insane, and the comments actually mention Versa Films by like name. Like, people know us now because of our work with Spirit Box, and it's like, it's wild. That has never happened before. And I'm super excited to see what, the response will be on the next one. But it is like, it's probably our riskiest video yet, because they're a metal band, and this is like their most sentimental song and our most sentimental video. It's super personal to me because it's about my grandmother, and it's based on, my experience. It's not like verbatim my experience, but it's very personal. It's very sad. And I hope people like it, but I'm also ready for it to be like my most criticized Spirit Box music video, because it's weirdly enough, it's risky in the metal world to do something that's more real and sentimental and sad, instead of just like, a lot of times you want to do something that's just angry or emotionless. And they're taking a big risk with me. But I think that's also the reason why their band is seeing so much success, is because everything they do comes from left field. You expect one thing from them, and then they do the opposite. And then now you expect this super heavy track, and the next song is going to be their softest track they've ever done. So that's just been such an amazing collaboration. I've been kind of growing with them. Obviously, they're growing in a big way, but my career has moved a little ahead with them, and I'm so lucky to work with them, and it's been like one of the greatest opportunities for me. And on that note, like, it all came from me offering to do them a job for free. I don't do a lot of free work. I'm pretty anti-free work, because a lot of times, there's not a lot of benefit for the creator than there is for the business or the band. But when you're reaching out to people to provide them free work because you see, that success is going to come their way, or you're banking on like, I really like what they're trying to put out there, and if I can be a part of spreading that, maybe they'll keep me on and we can grow together. Like, that does work, and it worked with Spirit Box. This is our 4th music video that's going to be coming out, and it's also the most exposure I've ever gotten, and it's because I reached out to people to do free work that I saw was an opportunity for both of us, versus someone just coming to me looking for free work because they have no money or whatever. That doesn't always work. Like, exposure doesn't work if that person has no exposure to give. So you need to get paid, or you need to be creatively invested or whatever. There's got to be something in it for you. And that's why I think, like, if you're going to do free work, reach out to the people that you admire, that you want to work with. Because free work does do you good. Like, you were talking about collaborations, and one of my favorite collaborators, I worked for him for free the first time, and it was just because I wanted to work under him, and he kind of took me under his wing, and he taught me a bunch of stuff. And like, if I didn't do that, I'd be so far behind compared to where I am. And it's just like, I don't stress like, oh, do free work everywhere. But like, if you see an opportunity, use that opportunity and like,
Yeah.
what can you offer if you're someone who just wants to like learn from someone or you want to get exposure from someone? Well, you can offer hard work, dedication, and doing things for free.
I think that's really good advice, because a lot of the advice to filmmakers who are just starting their journey is do free work, and that's about the extent of it. But going out and choosing what free work you do is very important, because like you said, those are the ones that are probably going to be the most beneficial for you.
I know I want to work in like the metal and punk music scene because that's kind of what I've grown up in. And like, you know, if a country artist comes and asks me to do a free video and I'm less into country, they have a smaller audience, and it's not really the route I want to take my career, but I'm looking at it as like, well, it's a portfolio piece. It's more so a portfolio piece for more country videos. So if I, you know, go do something that's specifically in the world I want to live in, that's where I'm starting to get people contacting me. And I've had some of my favorite bands, because they are friends with Spirit Box, I've seen them comment on my work now, and I'm like,
wow,
you know, just
that's gotta be super cool.
Yeah, I have no words. Like one of my favorite guitarists commented on like our video being like, oh, I love this video. Or one of this huge band that, you know, gets millions and millions of views and tours the world said like, oh, this is one of the best music videos I've ever seen. And I'm like, that's just like my work. Yeah, it's just like, it's mind blowing. It's very hyperbolic, but it's like, I'll take it. Like that's definitely the right thing I want to see, and that's going to move me towards working with those kind of clients. When I was in film school, I worked with this actress, and her brother was a Steadicam operator, a very like renowned Steadicam operator. So he chatted with me one day just to help me out, because I was about to move out of film school and I wanted to know, you know, how do I become a director or whatever. And yeah. You know, a lot of people think, well, you work on a film set and you slowly work your way up and whatever. And I worked on a big film set when I was in film school, and I did not enjoy it. I am not built to be a PA. Like it was grueling, and I was like, this could be the rest of my life. I ran into a guy like 50 years and hadn't moved up, and you know, those people are needed. Of course, you know, if you're happy to be a gaffer or whatever, what this Steadicam operator told me was, he was the Steadicam operator of like Juno and all these crazy things. He told me, if you want to direct. If you want to do camera operate. Because whatever you do and prove that you can do, that's what you get pigeonholed into. Everyone gets pigeonholed into something. So if you want to direct things, working your way up from a PA or a gaffer or a dolly grip or whatever, it's very slim that you're going to get the opportunity that moves you up over and over and over again until you're directing. Versus, you know, now where the world is, you can direct something yourself. Maybe it's, you know, very small, but you never know who's going to see that, or you're building the skills towards getting those real opportunities. Because this guy, he told me he did one shoot where he was asked to travel to like Africa or something as a Steadicam op, and he was like hesitant, but he did it. And after that, now he's known as like the traveling Steadicam operator. Like that's mostly what he does, because you do something once and people like believe that's who you are. Another good example of like this mindset is the director of like Shazam and Annabelle Creation and stuff.
Oh, yeah.
David Sandberg?
Yes.
Yeah, he was just like a YouTuber on Vimeo, and he would make short films, like very, very small, no budget short films with his wife.
His poor wife. She's the victim of all of these horror movies.
And his whole career was made out of that. Like, I think James Wan saw him and picked him up, and they took his 3-minute short film Lights Out, and now it's a feature film, and now he's a Hollywood director. And it's because he proved that he could direct by just doing it instead of like slowly working his way up. And I think, you know, I'm not saying that's probably not going to happen for me. That's probably not going to happen for 90% of filmmakers, but like, there's probably a better chance that people are going to find you and hire you for what you want to do by proving that you can do that job.
Well, I will leave links to your Instagram, website, whatever. And I am excited to see what you do. And I'm very excited to see your new Spirit Box music video. I'm sure I'm going to cry and love it. But it was great having you on, man. I really enjoyed talking to you.
Yeah, thank you so much for your time and the opportunity. And it was a real pleasure for me to be here.
And that's it. Thank you for listening. I hope this helps you do great work, be the artist you want to be, and helps you not be afraid to jump in with both feet and make things happen in your film community. Be sure to follow Dylan and Versa Films to keep up to date with all their exciting projects. If you enjoyed this podcast, I encourage you, do not subscribe. You may be writing your positive review on iTunes at this very moment, but people would start finding the show, and it might get a little out of hand, so refrain if you can. Thanks again for listening, and stay tuned for our next awesome guest on the Hometown Hollywood podcast. Perfect. Hryciuk.
I told someone that one time, and it was like, oh no, your last name, it's pronounced Hryciuk. And I was like, okay, yeah, that sounds great, but that's quite extravagant.